All right. Hi. Hi,
I'm
everybody.
Kelly Fitzpatrick,
I'm Fawn Preston with Aware Consulting Group.
and we're here today to talk with Fawn and find out what she's excited about in this field of mentoring. Also, see if we can find some joy and some hope during these COVID times. This has been a really rough time for a lot of us, and a lot of us that are losing our careers, losing our jobs, organizations folding. But
Yeah.
Fawn and I are feeling like it's our job to carry the hope, carry joy through the fires like water. And that joy that we get to carry turns into hope for me, for you,
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I just really feel like, despite everything that's going on right now, in our societies, in our roles, just period, like people are not okay. Mental health is like a major issue right now. And I really feel that if we continue to do the good work that we're doing and we have intention about it,
Integrity.
and integrity, we're still going to change the world. Like that's our goal, right? To have a healthier world, healing societies, healing trauma, and I just think we need to keep doing what we're doing and keep ourselves well in the meantime.
Yeah, and that means connecting with people that are going the same direction, even if it's different paths.
Yeah,
Sometimes the path is like a big highway. We're all walking up the highway together to the top of the mountain. Sometimes the path is like through the brambles, and we're having to climb up and cut our own path and get scratched, but we reach behind and we help pull up those that are struggling to come up with us.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and we're stronger in the process, right? Like that's our resilience, because the whole time that we're climbing up that, we're getting stronger, we're getting smarter, we're figuring it out. And then we can share that with others and role model that for others who are, a mile behind.
Yeah, and the people ahead of us are pulling us up the hill, and they're role modeling for us, and
Yep.
We're being passed down some love and some tools and some skills and some hope and some joy, and we get
Totally.
to continue to pass that down, which it becomes a responsibility. That gift becomes a responsibility, and then it turns and comes back to us as bigger gifts, which turns
Totally.
and becomes bigger responsibilities, and we keep passing that on, what we keep being given.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's finding our people, and I found
It's finding our
I
people.
found Fawn. Thank you, and Angel Prater.
And
Oh my
Angel
gosh.
Prater,
Yes.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
finding our people,
Yeah.
whoever those people are. I was taught by my spiritual director years ago to pray only when we're ready. God, please bring me the people I need in my life, and keep me from those that I don't. And when we pray
Yeah.
that prayer, all these people that we think are going to be in our lives forever are suddenly pulled out, and they're gone, and they're just totally gone.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, where did everybody go? And then there's new people right here in my face saying, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you. I'm
Totally.
here to be with you. I'm here to be on your, going on my path in the same direction as your path.
Yeah.
And those people
I
are
heard
such a shock, and Fawn is just, I'm so amazed that Fawn showed up in my life at this time.
Me too. I heard a quote the other day that said, the people who are trying to bring you down are already below you. And it just made so much sense to me. Like, no, like we don't even have to mess with that. We don't have to, we don't have to worry our brains and our bodies about that. We just keep having to push forward, because the universe takes care of it on their own accord.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that.
So what is the thing that you are most passionate about at this moment?
Man, there's so many things right now, obviously. So I run a consulting group called Aware Consulting, and we deliver trainings and technical assistance to providers within behavioral health organizations, addiction organizations, medical populations. But our overarching mission is really to heal trauma. And to be trauma aware, because the prevalence of trauma is so, it's everywhere. I mean, we have no idea when we're walking down the street if the person that, we smile when we pass, or the person that we don't even make eye contact with, is somebody who is either, a trauma survivor or somebody who is actively accruing trauma. So, we just say, like, heal trauma, be trauma aware, because the more aware that you are that you're not the only person out there who has trauma, the more able we are to curb our reactions in tough moments.
And we can be of service to each other.
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
moment. And when one person shuts down, the other person can step forward and then help until somebody's out of the fight, flight, freeze, or submit mode.
Totally, absolutely.
And then they can step back in.
Yeah, no,
Can I tell
absolutely.
a quick story about
Please,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
please do.
When I was a volunteer, peer mentor, neighborhood peer, at the trauma intervention program out of the fire department, TIP Northwest, I had a situation where I had to accompany a police officer, of all people, to a house where somebody had to be notified that a loved one really close to them had died. And the officer that I was with was a fairly new officer. He was young, he was really well trained, he had good intentions, and he was trying to do his very best.
Yeah.
And he stopped me on the way to the door and he goes, "I've never made a death notice before, and I'm scared." And it was very traumatic for him. I don't know what had happened in his life, but he was very traumatized in that moment. And he said, "Can you make the death notification instead?" And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I said, "Here's what to do. I cannot legally. You have to. But say this sentence.
Yeah.
That's all you have to say. And then turn it over to me, and I can help.
And I can provide support.
And you can watch how I help that person
Perfect.
as silently and as gently and with compassion as possible."
Excuse me.
And so he made the death notification. I helped that person figure out, how to pick up those pieces, who to call next.
Totally.
Sit down, have a drink of water. Who am I going to call? And that officer went on from there. We never spoke again. I never had to run into that person again, but I was really shocked that I could be of service to a police officer.
No,
who was going
absolutely.
through trauma. And that I did never expect. I never expected that would be part of it.
Well, and so I think that's what we're starting to notice too. So, we're currently in the process of training some law enforcement in, trauma-aware care. And the stories that we're hearing over and over and over again out of these police teams is that they have so much trauma of their own because, they're working with traumatized people. And so when somebody is activated, when they're in that fight or flight, that can look a lot of different ways. It can be super harsh. And so police officers are coming out of it, highly traumatized as well. And so that's why we talk about, recognizing our own activation, recognizing other people's activation as well, and handling them in, compassionate, trauma-aware way.
With grace and mercy.
With grace and respect, but also, being aware of our activation, because our activation is going to throw up a wall and make us not be able to support that person in the way that they need to be supported, and it may be traumatizing for all involved because of it.
Yeah.
So super important to recognize that we all have our own feelings and we all have, a certain capacity for different levels of chaos, and that's where that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and faint, and submit.
Right.
Yeah, totally. That's where that comes into that equation.
Not submit, except if I'm triggered, but decided.
Totally. Yeah. It's all a part of why we're out there doing this work and trying to do, good work.
Talk to me about how the quarantine has traumatized the people that you're training, because we have our own personal trauma, but then we have this whole societal trauma that we're all going through with this forced trauma that is called a quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so currently I'm working at Recovery Works Northwest, which is an addiction treatment, medication assisted, as well as behavioral health treatment. And what we're finding is that, even folks that were doing well, like in their recovery, even folks that were, felt like they had their coping skills in line, felt like they were, really starting to make it somewhere in their recovery, even those of us who've been in recovery for a really long time, are struggling, because when you start taking all of their tools away, all their recovery capital away, maybe you were going to the gym every morning and that was making you feel good and you were feeling healthy and, getting those endorphins busting, once they close down those, places to go, that changed the game. Once, you know, people's meetings weren't going anymore, same deal. It's like they started losing their recovery capital, and it wasn't even because of anything they've done, but because of COVID. And so now you're isolated, now you're stuck inside. Any of us with anxiety, any of you out there with anxiety know, like putting that mask on, hard, difficult. Walking through a grocery store with a mask on and feeling like you're having a panic attack and having to pull it away from your face, all of these things have been so hard on all of us. That, you know, people are struggling and they're second guessing themselves and they're feeling like they don't have the tools they had, when actually it just means that we got to find new ones, right?
And to complicate all of this comes with the complicated trauma and the complicated grief of the fact that regardless of where we sit on how we interpret what's going on, people are dying.
Yeah.
We all know people who have died,
Absolutely.
either from this illness
Yep.
called COVID, or whether it's from the flu or pneumonia, or from passing over
Addiction
in their
or
addiction
suicide
or
prevention.
suicide.
Yeah.
And I've known people who have died from murders related to the stress and the tension and the evil that's
Totally.
walking around right now.
Yeah.
The complicated grief combined with this complicated trauma
Yeah.
is
Totally.
overwhelming to so many of us.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, throughout all of this, right, you know, we talk about our first line workers, our first responders, and peer mentors, our first responders. You know, we're all still out there. We're all still out, you know, going into communities, you know, even when everybody else was pulling back and working from home,
Yeah.
you know, we couldn't. You know, that's not how our job works. You know, we're still out there going into homes and going into camps, you know, and trying to provide support and bring hope, you know, and inspiration to people. And, you know, that is definitely something right now I'm hearing all the time, is that they're spent. They've worked so hard, you know, through this 2 years of, you know, quarantine and mandates and all of these things. And so, you know, they're struggling. And so we talk about self-care and we talk about boundaries and how to have a voice, you know, saying things like, hey, by the way, you know, I've worked too much this week and I think that I need to take Friday off. And how to say that and not feel like you're not doing your job, you know, or not, you know, rising to the occasion. This is about us tending our wellness, and right now our mental wellness is the most important thing in the circle.
And the trauma of not being able, for those that are teleworking, to still do their job.
Totally.
And to do it on the phone. And when you're trying to reach out with somebody who's got severe mental illness, huge paranoia, which is backed up by what's going on with the quarantine.
Totally.
So the paranoia has been verified.
Absolutely.
Plus there's addiction problems going on. When you were reaching out to them and our only tool is the telephone,
Yeah.
which is happening for a lot of us at times.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we can't get them on the phone.
Yep.
We might leave cards at their door or at their tent site or, you know, on their Humvee, wherever they're living. And I'm talking literally, you know, from experience.
Yeah.
That not everybody's on the street. Some people are barricaded in their apartments that they can barely afford to keep because of the stress of what's happening.
Yeah.
And we talk to the families on the phone who are saying, I can't contact my child. I can't help my child. My child is extremely paranoid. And they're in their addiction. That's traumatizing to us as first responders, as second responders, as family support, as people trying to support those in their addiction and in their severe mental illness.
Yeah.
And then that
totally.
severe mental illness is complicated by the PTSD that the parents have, that we have. And the vicarious trauma, it just builds and builds and builds. So in supporting ourselves, we have to support our teams and do
Yeah.
self-care for our teams. We have to find our people,
Yeah.
whoever they are.
Absolutely.
If that means going to Ireland to find a recovery meeting of people that think like I do.
Yep.
Finding people in Australia to support, that we're getting support from. Whatever that looks like right now, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're going to be running out of gas and running our batteries down, and we'll be in the side of the road in a ditch with a car full of people that are depending on us.
Yeah.
And we won't get them where they're going, and we won't get to where we're going.
Totally.
Unless we take care of ourselves and our people and our team.
Absolutely. Well, and giving ourselves grace, you know,
Yeah.
one of the things that I heard you say that resounded for me is that, you know, going to look for people and not being able to find them, you know, their camps have moved or they're not answering their door, you know, because they're fearful, you know, of these variants, you know, and the virus. And so feeling so terrible and being like, oh my gosh, like I can't find them, I'm not doing my job hard enough, I'm not trying hard enough, you know, and like giving yourself some grace that maybe right this minute that person doesn't want to be found, and that is okay. And when the time is right and they're ready for you, they'll find you.
And then looking at our own trauma in our own lives, you know, and our own family members. Some of us have family members like our own children.
Yeah.
Or exes that are on the streets.
Totally.
And so for us to outreach to people in a similar situation that we're in as parents, as exes,
Yep.
as people who, you know, our former sponsees are out there, or our former sponsors are out there.
Yeah.
How do we take care of ourselves when we're getting triggered at the same time?
Absolutely.
And that comes down to really doing whatever self-care works for you.
Right.
For me.
Yep.
For you.
Totally.
And
well,
I
and
know
recognizing that self-care can be a whole lot more than a hot bath.
Yes.
You know, sometimes self-care for me is shutting everything off. You know, no phones, you know, no nothing. You know, just relaxing. It could be pulling everything out of a closet and, you know, reorganizing, because every morning when I get dressed, I can't find something, you know.
Having a scheduled breakdown, which means telling everybody the phone is off, there's no doorbell that's going to work today, and I get together a huge bucket of ice cream, maybe in my case stevia-based ice cream.
Yep.
And getting really sad songs and really silly movies, and a big, huge, extra-size large box of Kleenex.
Yep. And letting yourself
to feel and spend the whole Saturday doing nothing but crying.
Yep.
And then that lasts about 15 minutes, because there's a certain amount of crying you can physically do.
Right.
Maybe it's an hour.
Right.
And then the tears are gone and our eyes are scratchy, and we have the rest of the day sit in bed and watch TV and have a good time.
Totally.
You know,
well, you know, so
scheduled
there was
breakdown.
actually a study done on tears, and they took this group of individuals and they had them cut an onion, you know, tears. They gave them something sad, you know, they you know, put it in something that makes you very happy and emotional. And what's super interesting is that every single one of those tears came back with different hormone compounds. So what that tells me is that when you need to cry, you cry, because that is your body getting rid of those hormones and allowing you to have that experience. So all this, you know, preconceived notion about like, oh, we got to be tough, you know, we can't break down, we don't want anybody to see us cry. That's cool. They don't have to see you cry.
We just have to not cry harder
Just
than
cry.
our clients.
Right. Just go,
and I don't
go
like
cry.
our clients, but our people that
Yeah.
we're assisting.
Absolutely. It's really important for us to feel whatever it is that our body needs to feel. Get it out of your system and move on.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah.
You know?
Feel it go through.
Yep.
You know, if somebody comes to us and they have relapsed or they've had a suicide in their family,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of weird if we don't cry.
Yeah.
We just have to make sure that we feel our feelings.
Totally.
And let it go, and then we go home and we do our real crying.
Yeah, well, and sometimes you need that, right? You need that deep, you know, cry, that sob it out, you know, kind of cry, because once again, that is your body being like, I need this, like, get rid of it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. Self-care is very important.
I couldn't cry for years. There were
Really?
years I could not cry.
Oof.
And once I did, I thought the crying would never stop.
Yeah.
And when it didn't, I realized this has turned into a mental health, PTSD, you know, severe depression.
Totally, yeah.
And so then I went and got support for that. I did meridian point tapping. I got on antidepressants for a little while. I did what I needed to do and got outside help, because I am not the expert in everything. And I can't fix with me what's broken. And I don't think I'm broken. I think I'm healing.
Yeah. We're all fractured a little.
Yeah.
You know?
We all got our stuff.
Nothing wrong with that.
But we can't fix what's inside with only our own tools. Sometimes we have to lean on other people. We have to find our people, whether they're professional, whether they're peers, whether they're friends. We can't pretend that we're self-sufficient.
Right.
That is not self-care.
Right. Well, and that's what we need right now, right? Is connection.
Yeah.
You know, if that's one thing we've learned over the last couple of years of dealing with COVID, is that, you know, disconnected is not healthy. And right now, a lot of people are disconnected. And so finding that connection, you know, they say connection is the opposite of addiction. Connection is also the opposite of mental health. It's also the opposite of trauma. You know, it's also the opposite of loneliness and, you know, suicidality, because if we're disconnected, there's no, there's nothing. There's nothing for us to reach out for. And so it's understandable as to why people get sad and they feel hopeless when they're disconnected. So we really need to connect with each other, and we really need to connect with others out there, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have anybody.
Yeah.
So it's
and
important.
We can't let them pull us into the darkness. We have to have our feet on stones. We have to be stable ourselves. So that means continue to work on ourselves. That means our self-inventories, finding our people, doing our own trauma work. And that does not necessarily mean talking about the trauma, because talk therapy can be really re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
So that means doing
unless you
something
find somebody that really, speaks to you.
Right. And they know how to support you with getting the trauma out of your body at the same time. Because we do need to be heard.
Yeah.
But if we're stuck in the story, that's not healing. That's re-traumatizing to me and all of the listeners.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what you do for your self-care. What really cranks your heart open and makes you feel joy and hope in the middle of all of this quarantine and all the trauma, people losing jobs, losing careers, and losing lives.
Yeah.
Losing loved ones.
And losing loved ones, absolutely. I use a lot of different tools. I think that that's really important for all of us who are in recovery, that, that we talk about finding our own pathway, but our pathway could incorporate a lot of different things. So I absolutely love breath work. I have all different kinds of breaths that I do, in different scenarios, that get my oxytocin pumping and, make me feel good inside. They help me sleep as well. I love somatic experiencing, and what that really means is like the brain and the body and how they correlate. So, tapping could be a part of that, acupressure, skin stimulation, just dragging your fingernails across, your forearm could be a form of somatic experiencing.
Getting back into your body,
getting
where you're
in your
safe
body
in this moment, not stuck in the body moments and memories from the past where we were
and
not.
just getting in your head, right, and just cycling through and just feeling like, you're not present. It's like bringing you back, to that place of like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm here.
My name is Kelly.
Yeah.
The room is white. Today is Saturday, and I am safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I love music. I think that music, narrates my life. And so, I build playlists based on whatever I want to feel. And so, like, I have a sad playlist. When I want to be sad, I play a sad playlist and I allow myself to cry and get it out of my body. I have empowering ones, where I get in the car and I roll the windows down and I sing at the top of my lungs. Because that helps too. So when you sing loudly and you open up that diaphragm, it actually tones the vagus nerve, which is good for your brain and your body. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things. I love watching.
What's your favorite song at the moment that gets you singing?
Oh man, there's so many. I actually lean into Motown a lot. I lean into Motown a lot. I'm from Michigan, and so Motown is my jam.
In the Motown songs.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely love Motown, but I also like some of these empowering newer songs by Beyonce and Doja Cat, and Lizzo. All the Rumors Are True. Yeah, that's one of my favorites right now, and that's probably been the one that's been cycling in my car.
I like Sober by Tom McDonald.
Oh, I do. Yeah, that's a great one.
Well, you know what I have stuck in my car all the time right now is I have the Rolling Stones.
I love the Rolling Stones. I love the Rolling Stones. Yeah, I love Queen. I totally listen to Queen all the time, and I really love show tunes. I love Moulin Rouge, and some of those kind of sassy, jazz hands, kind of songs. So yeah, it just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But, I get in that car and I turn on that music and I roll the windows down and you let the wind, blow through your hair, and just sing. Yeah, just sing your heart out, because at the end you feel so much better. You feel it here and you feel it here,
When my children, I'm an old homeschooler and I teach till it's taught. And I had a difficult time teaching my kids about meditation.
Yeah.
Because one of my kids always has to be moving.
Sure.
And couldn't sit down, and the trauma was so great, and you close your eyes and you go away, you'll go away into trauma sometimes.
Right.
And so when people have high trauma, music is a great way, because then this one child of mine who's now grown would spin and dance, and we'd put on really loud music.
That's awesome.
And we would dance in the living room as loud and as fast as we could.
Totally.
And that child would get into a trance
Nice.
of joy. And that was that child's form of meditation.
Yeah. Well, and then they sleep better.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's not a bad thing.
Yes. And so that's a great way to meditate.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Well, so I have 5 kids, and 24 all the way down to 11. And I have this little guy with these great big feelings. And like, I'm a person with big feelings, you know, so I understand when he gets emotional and moody and broody, you know, and stomps his feet. And so I had to really kind of start looking at him as if like, okay, Fawn, he has big feelings too, you know, so, and thinking about like what I use and being able to use those with him. And so a lot of times, you know, he'll come in and his voice is 2 notches higher, you know, my brother just said, and I'm like, whoa, hey, you know, let's bring it down now. Say, I can't even hear you right now. I need you to breathe for me. And it's the cutest thing. He'll like stop and he'll be like, and you can tell he's stressed, but he's using that, you know. I'm teaching them very early about how to tend to your mental wellness, because it's so easy, especially from that age forward, right before the teen years, right before all these hormones are introduced.
And it's some emotional self-discipline that is positive and healing, and they can find that they have the power to slow down the reactions into emotional responses that they get to choose a little bit more by using that simple skill of breathing.
And if you teach them now, those are skills that they'll have later. You know, those are skills they're going to take into adulthood. Those were skills we were never given. You know, and so I'm trying to give them more than what was given to me, and you know, with hopes that by the time they're my age, that they'll be able to, you know, regulate a little better. You know,
when I grew up, the skill I was given that was a family heritage was resentment. Being from the most insulted family on the planet. And sarcasm. I thought sarcasm was the language of intimacy, and thought the more you love someone, the more
sarcastic you are.
the more you say mean things and laugh, expecting the victim to laugh.
Oh no.
And no. So I've had to do my recovery around my responses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and ours was anger. You know, like there was a lot of anger. You know, we were in a house with domestic violence. You know, everybody had a temper. I have a temper, you know, and I would say, you know, from my first daughter, who's 24 now, Raven, to, you know, my youngest, Riddick, you know, who's 11, what she got is nowhere near what Riddick's getting, because at 18 years old, when I delivered her, I still hadn't reached that point where I had figured out my own stuff yet. So there was a lot of yelling, you know, everything was, you know, yelling and control and, you know, power differentials. And now it's the exact opposite.
Because you have children in recovery, you know, from your recovery.
They learned with me as I learned. You know, so like the little ones are way better about their self-care and about, you know, their emotion regulation than the big ones. The big ones are doing great. But, you know, you can definitely tell a difference when you've implemented those skills into a child's life very young. You know, when a 12-year-old is sitting in the middle of your living room meditating by himself for an hour, it's just like, didn't know that was a thing. You know, and it is. They're amazing. Yeah, totally.
So talk to me about what you would like to see in this development of coming out of the quarantine in our field of mentors. Where is going to be the newest change that you see happening for our field as we're coming out of this quarantine?
Honestly, trauma awareness is a huge part of it, as well as supervision. So one of the things that, you know, we're noticing just kind of across the gamut is that, you know, peer-delivered services is highly coveted right now. You know, the federal government, the cities, the states, and the agencies have all really realized how important it is to implement peer-delivered services into their programming. But what we're also finding is a lot of them don't know how. You know, they come in with good intentions, they bring in these PDS programs, but they don't know how to nurture peer mentors.
PDS meaning peer-delivered supports.
Peer-delivered supports, yes, absolutely, and peer-delivered services. And so these peer mentors are getting into these clinical environments where it's a very different dynamic, you know.
And peers are not clinicians.
They're not, absolutely not. And we all have value. And so, you know, clinicians have a certain value, medical providers have a certain value, caseworkers have a certain value, and then peer supports, peer mentors, and certified recovery mentors have a different fidelity and a different focus. So we don't want them to be co-opted. We don't want them to become mini clinicians. You know, we don't want them to become mini caseworkers.
And we don't want to be licensed. Certification is a lot more appropriate for us as
for that
peers.
role. Yeah.
And we'll get into the licensing and certification on another discussion.
Absolutely.
But there's a good reason that we're certified, not licensed.
Yeah, and there's fidelity in that programming. And so what happens is, you know, when you look at this data, when all of these providers look at this data and they are like, oh yeah, this data looks great, we really, really want peer-delivered services in our programming, they're looking at data based on fidelity. So if you bring peer mentors into your program and you turn them into clinicians, you don't have peer mentors anymore. You have mini clinicians. So the data and the fidelity goes away.
Just like we're not mini POs,
Nope.
we're not mini deputy sheriffs, we're not
Nope.
mini police officers.
We do not distribute compliance measures. We do not take urinalysis on people. We do not do assessments on people. That is not our role. Our
Unless
role
it's
is
a needs
about
or risk assessment. That's the
Right.
only
I
kind
could
that
see
we
that.
do. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
we don't do addiction assessments. We don't do mental health assessments.
No.
And a lot of us feel a little strange. You know, there's some folks that decided that they needed to do violence potential assessments, and that's still up in the air. That's still
harsh.
getting
Yeah.
figured out. But the way the violence assessments are done right now is really not the best
No.
model for what we're doing as peers.
Well, and it's all about the relationship,
Yeah.
you know? And so when you
Yes.
start introducing, you know, compliance measures, shame, if you are shaming the
Yeah.
people that you are working with, you are destroying the relationship. You are hindering that relationship, because the main reason that we are in this role is because we are able to develop a different kind of relationship based on our lived experience. And so, you know, they're going to trust us more. They're going to tell us more. All that deep stuff that they're not telling anybody, they're going to talk to us about. And so that is why we are so important in that role, and why it is important for us to keep the fidelity of what we do, because the clinicians have a specific focus, and that's great. That's why they're there. Caseworkers have another focus. That's great. That's why we're there. Ours is engagement, re-engagement, and building a relationship with a person that enables them to trust us, to tell us the real deal stuff, so that they can get it out of their brains and their bodies, and we can better help them as a system, because they're honest and they trust us, and they should be able to trust us,
Yeah.
you know.
And there's a difference between that sacred story that's very private and the confidential information that we must share with our team. That's why when going into that relationship, we discuss that with our folks.
Transparency.
Before we get to a problem, we talk to them about what is a mandatory reporter, what is duty to warn, when will they get into a situation where we will have to walk them through that and have them learn how to call for help and call to report, rather than seeing us as somebody who's on the other side of the table.
Right, part of the man,
and,
the system.
And up above. You know,
Yeah.
we're not power over. We're sitting
with,
next to somebody.
power with.
Power with.
Absolutely.
And so if I have to make a report about mandatory report, or if a PO calls and says, okay, we want this mentor to bring in this client of yours, this client, because we're going to arrest him. We're
We're not doing that. That's not a
doing
part of
that.
our job.
We go back to the original contract. We go back to the original supervisor who is of that PO's division,
Yep.
and we talk about what is our role.
Yep.
And if there's a problem, then we go to our person that we're working with and we say, hey, you're PO. I'm getting phone calls. They're concerned. They want to see you. You know what they're about.
Right.
You know what's happened. How about you tell me what's happened?
Yeah,
And then we walk you through it.
absolutely.
And the natural consequences. And you know what? If you do go to jail, I'll meet you at the back door when you
I'm
come
going
out.
to continue to support you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we will walk you through this instead of putting you in the car and becoming
Yeah.
the little junior PO and driving you in to be arrested.
Totally.
That's not trauma-informed
No.
peer support.
Absolutely.
To trick somebody. And so the transparency and the trust can be built before there's a problem, because we're transparent about, okay, you're here, your PO is paying for this spot, so we have this particular relationship with your PO.
Yeah.
Or your PO has said if you relapse, that's not their business because you're working with us, that's our business and we'll work with them.
Right.
Or your PO has an arrangement ahead of time that if you relapse, then we have to notify them. So guess what? I'm going to walk you through. You notify them.
Right.
Those different arrangements are dependent entirely on the contract that is set up ahead of time. So we treat our people like adults.
Yeah.
We explain to them, this is the way this program is set up. This is the way your situation is set up. And so this is how we want to work with you.
Yeah.
Power over you.
Well, and that's about that transparency, right? Like you letting them know exactly what your responsibilities are. You know, what if you are a mandatory reporter, that's, you know, you're letting them know that. So, hey, by the way, if we talk about these things, I do have to say something, because then that gives them the opportunity to decide if they want to tell you that or not. Like
or if
that's
they want
safety.
us to walk us through that whole
Yeah,
situation.
that's safety.
Yeah.
You know, giving them the right to decide what information they want to be forthright with and what they don't. You know, so yeah, absolutely.
And we can help them practice with the little things so that when the big things come,
Totally.
they've had practice in, I have a voice, I have power, I can kind of envision what the consequences could
Yep.
be, and you know what? I can get through anything.
Yeah,
I can get through anything clean and sober,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Absolutely.
And I've found my people.
and that's that power of we, right? When you've got somebody else on your side, you have an ally, you have somebody walking beside you, it totally changes the dynamic. It reduces the fear, you know, it reduces the anxiety. It you know, makes you more confident and more able, you know, to walk into these situations that are probably pretty scary.
And the more we're uncomfortable walking through stuff, that means we're outside of our comfort zone. That means we're in the growth area.
Yep.
And so if we're growing and we're teaching our folks how to get back their voice, how to reclaim their power, I'm not going to empower you.
Right, no,
You're not going to empower me.
No.
People have their own
people
power.
empower themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we help them find that.
Yep, yep.
And
we
just-
say with
that's
Aware
it.
that we create platforms for empowerment, because we can't empower somebody else. We can be empowering. We can, you know, encourage. You know, we can help eliminate barriers. We can do things that help facilitate empowerment. But what we're really doing is we're creating platforms for empowerment so that people can empower themselves.
And that's healing.
yeah, and that's
That's
healing.
resiliency.
Absolutely.
That's trauma resiliency.
Yep. Totally.
And the other thing too is our folks and us, we're survivors.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
we may have a lot of trauma, but that what we have survived
Yeah.
is proof of our resilience that we have deep inside of each of us
Absolutely.
already. So we have to look at the strengths, we have to look at the resilience, and we have to grow those in ourselves and help people learn to grow that in themselves.
Yeah, well, and at the very least, we get to role model that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, we get to be role models for people and say, like, you know, I've got a felony and, you know, I've been in jail, I've been houseless, I was an addict, you know, I've got mental health stuff, and this is where I am today, you know? So, like, the proof is here. We are the proof, you know, that recovery is not only possible, it is 100% probable for every single one of us.
Yeah, and recovery can look different for everybody.
Yep.
So what might be recovery for me might be harm reduction for somebody else.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
We don't get to define what somebody else's recovery is.
Totally. We just get to help them figure it out, which is even more beautiful, you know, helping them find different pathways. And there's so many amazing options out there right now, you know, whether you're like a 12-step person or you like Buddhist recovery,
Or
Dharma
sweat
recovery,
lodge.
or sweat lodge, or art, you know, creating things, you know, yoga, Reiki. There's so many beautiful holistic options for wellness right now that it's fun to be able to introduce new things to people and help them figure out what their pathway looks like. It doesn't just have to be one road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This
thank
has
you.
been wonderful, Fawn, and I'm so glad we got to spend this time together talking.
Me too.
I forgot to introduce this video is also part of the Lorica, which is my private practice, and hopefully I'll be able to upload this to the Lorica video series on YouTube, the Lorica with Kelly Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll be uploaded to your website.
Yeah, and that's
And,
awareconsulting.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, yay.
And I think it's the Lorica. Well, I don't know. I'll put it in the comments.
In the
I don't know
description.
my website,
Yeah.
but it's out there. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
So we're gonna
have
go
a
ahead.
great day, everybody.
Yes, wonderful. Find your people. Heal.